All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is MJ Robinson. I am so happy to be here with you tonight for a relaxing crafting session. I'm going to put on a little bit of music. If it's too loud for some reason or too distracting, there are ways for you who are watching live to comment and let me know. Um, let's see here. All right, so I should be able to see your comments if you're watching on Facebook, and I will get started and lead you through the steps to create two different kinds of paper plants. What I like about these, they make great gifts and they never die. So if you are someone who loves plants but can't seem to keep your house plants alive, paper plants might be the solution. They're beautiful. You can make them look realistic. You can make them into your own creation, maybe a purple polka dotted leaf and a bright blue flower, or maybe you want to go more like a real plant. So this evening we'll be learning how to make a paper plant that looks a lot like this plant, which is called a spider plant. You may have seen them. They're a common house plant. They don't need a lot of light, and they also shoot off these long stalks and make babies that way. So this is a tiny baby spider plant coming from this one. So they're very popular because they reproduce easily. And we will make our own out of paper tonight. To start with, though, we're going to be making a flower. Maybe you've seen a flower that looks like this before. Often it's a white petal, like one petal that kind of wraps around itself like a cup. And then in the middle, it has a yellow, I believe it's called a stamen, that sticks up out of it. And it has a nice long stalk and leaf. So we are going to start tonight by making a calla lily flower. These are the materials that you will need for your calla lily. You will need, for the stem, we are going to be wrapping either a pencil, maybe one that, like this one has an eraser that's so hard I can't even use it. So I thought, okay, I don't use this pencil that much. Maybe I can use it as my flower stem. Or maybe around the house you have some wooden skewers. Some people like to grill or make shish kebab or grill like meats or vegetables on skewers. I believe this one's made out of bamboo. So find something around the house that's long and skinny that you can cover up with paper. We'll also be cutting strips of yellow and green paper. But if you have other colors you want to use instead, you can use other colors. You'll also need a piece of blank white paper, something like this, like computer printer paper. If you want to make the traditional calla lily that has a white petal, a yellow middle, and the green stem. You will also need a little bit of glue. I have Elmer's glue. If you have a glue stick, you can make that work. If all you have is clear tape, that's fine too. You will also need some scissors. So make sure you have some scissors nearby. And then you should be good to go. The first step to making our calla lily flower is to take either our pencil or our skewer and our strips of yellow and green paper. I didn't cut my strips yet, so I'm going to cut my strips out, and you can follow along with me if you didn't cut yours out yet either. All right, so I think I'm gonna make my strips about 1 inch wide. And for me, I know that this part of my thumb is about 1 inch. But different people have different size hands, but I know that I like that trick for my hand size. And it doesn't have to be exact. And I'm gonna cut the long way of my paper. If you like using a ruler, maybe you wanna use a ruler for this part. But for me, I just wanna cut it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it isn't, it's a little wider at the top than the bottom, but it doesn't really matter. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to wrap part of our skewer or pencil, whichever long skinny tool you are using, with your yellow paper. So I'm going to start and get really tight with my wrapping. I'm going to carefully wrap my yellow paper around and around. And I'll go kind of on a diagonal. So that over time I will get further along on my skewer. So I'll just keep going, and I'll try to keep it nice and tight the whole time. Mine got a little fat in the middle. That's okay. I'll just keep trying to make it nice and tight as I keep going along. See how I'm wrapping it up? Maybe you have tape. You could also use colored tape if you have special colored tapes instead of paper. And, you know, we probably only need to get about 1/3 of the way down our stem with our yellow. Because if you look at the flower, the yellow part is only from here to here, and the rest of the flower will be green. So we can stop around here, and I'm gonna cut mine with about 1 inch left so that I can add glue to this part and wrap it up nicely like this. So that's the next step. Once you have your yellow strip wrapped about 1/3 of the way up your pencil or your skewer, then you can add some glue and wrap it up. I'm using a glue stick because it's probably the fastest drying glue that I have. All right, so you can see the purple of my glue. I'll keep wrapping that nice and tight. And then I'm gonna hold it for a minute to let it dry. I'll just apply a little pressure so that it stays in place. All right, it's looking good so far. Next, I'm going to take a piece of green paper because I'm doing mine in the traditional colors, but maybe you want to use pink paper and have a pink stemmed plant. Whatever color you want to use, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to cut a strip of the paper that's about 1 inch wide. So that's about this big. And again, this does not have to be perfectly straight, but you can do your best. So this part is going, I see that my friend Kiku is watching. Hi. And Kiku said, I use tape so that it wouldn't keep falling off the stick. I know mine is a little slippery. Like I can take the stick out if I want. So that's a good idea to use a little bit of tape to just like make sure that it stays put. You could put a little piece of tape right here because we'll cover it up. So same thing here as we did before. To start wrapping, I'm going to start at a diagonal and I'm going to wrap around like this. I could even put a little dot of glue right underneath here and then continue to twirl my paper around the stick in a diagonal like this. So I don't need glue, but I could use it to reinforce. And again, it kind of might be a little wider at some points than I would like, but that's okay. I'm going to try to keep my paper somewhat diagonal so I can make progress as I wrap it down along the stick. And it's not perfectly tight against the stick, and that's okay. I think I'm going to use Kiku's advice and add a little bit of tape because mine is getting slidey. So I'm going to actually add a little bit of tape or glue to the green paper at the top like I thought I should, so that it sticks to the yellow above it, which will hopefully help keep it in place. This is my favorite part of crafting, is that sometimes it doesn't go exactly right, but that's a chance for you to think outside the box of, okay, my paper's not staying where I want it to, so what can I do to fix that? Add a little glue this time, and I'm starting over with my wrapping. It's already kind of curled from last time I did it, so that's good. And wrap, wrap, wrap. You might be a little faster than me. Some of you might already have your pencil or your skewer wrapped. And you are waiting patiently to learn how to make the petals. Look, I have just enough paper to finish my skewer. All right, and at the very bottom, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use some glue at the last part so that I can seal that paper to itself and finish my stem. All right, your flower should look like this. a funny stick that is part yellow and part green, or whatever colors you ended up using. We're gonna put this aside, and next we are going to cut out a shape for our flower petal. The shape that we're making is kind of like a teardrop shape, but a little bit wider. And it also has a little bit of a notch at the bottom so that we can stick it easily to our stem. So for me, I know that this flower, the yellow part, only comes up to like halfway or 2/3 of the way up the top of the flower. So when I'm planning to cut out my shape, I want to lay my stem down and probably use a pen or a pencil to make an outline of how big I want my teardrop shape to be. I decided I wanted it about this big for this flower. So if you can copy and make a similar shape to this, that would be awesome. Next, I'm going to cut it out. And I don't want any black on my flower, so I'm going to cut on the inside of the line that I made. This sort of reminds me of the playing card shape called the spade. Or like the top of a shovel. Or like an onion, if you've ever seen an onion with hairy roots or a piece of garlic. A lot of shapes in nature look like other things from nature, like a flower petal. All right. So what we will do is use this little part, and this little part at the bottom is what we're going to eventually put some glue on and wrap around right where the yellow turns into green. But before we do that, we're actually gonna do a little work to bend our paper to look a little more naturally like the way a calla lily looks. So with another pencil or with your stem, I want you to take the edges of your teardrop shape, your petal shape, and just similar to how we were curling our strips of paper, we're going to wrap the edges so that they have a little bit of a curve to them, like this. So just by curling it over my stem once, the paper keeps this curly shape to it. So on both sides of the petal, we want to make sure that it starts curving into the middle. We want to wrap our paper like this. And then let it go. And it will naturally keep a little bit of that curve. So in the end, it looks like this. And sometimes these plants, like this part of it, kind of curves backwards. So that's something you can do too, is just gently curve the tip backwards to make it look natural. All right. So you'll see now when you wrap your flower around the stem that it might overlap a little, the two petals. So you can choose which one will go on top and which one will go on the bottom. This is a good point to add glue on this bottom part. So I had that purple glue stick and I put my glue on the bottom. There's kind of a pretty part of my stem where it forms a little triangle. And I'm gonna aim for that spot. I'm wrapping the white around really tight so that it'll stick. And I do have one of the petals overlapping the other, which makes it a little difficult. But if I'm patient and I hold it in place, I think it should stick. And if not, maybe I'll need a little tape or a different kind of glue. So I'll just squeeze it nice and tight, see if I can get it to stick. That's not working for me. I'm gonna try a different kind of glue. But I noticed my paper is getting a little worn out, so I might need to use tape. I'm adding a little tape just to make sure that it stays strong. It's stuck pretty well, but this one part keeps coming undone. And I'd like to be sure that it will stay on. So I'll just wrap a piece of clear tape around that part. And there's my flower. You can keep working on, if you want to keep working on like how those curves in the paper look, now's a good time to adjust it a little bit. Make sure the yellow part is centered. And then we have one more step to finish our calla lily. Okay, so the last step for my calla lily is I would love for it to have a leaf coming off of it. To make the calla lily leaf, I'm going to I have this paper left. I'm going to use the shorter side and make another 1-inch strip. Like this. Then I'm going to fold that in half the long way to make one skinny strip. It's easiest to do this on a table, but I'm going to hold it up so that I can show you. I'm folding my skinny strip in half. So it will look like this. And then I'm going to make a similar shape on one side. So I want you to make sure that you are cutting the shape on the side with the 2 flaps open. We want to keep the folded side straight, and we don't want to cut that side. And if you mess this up the first time, you'll get it and you can try it again. But let me show you before you do it. I'm going to cut a shape like this. And when I unfold it, it will look like a leaf. Because a leaf usually has a central vein in the middle. And then I can find a spot on my lily where I want to attach it, add a little glue, and I might want to bend that back a little bit so it looks natural. This. And then add my little bit of glue at the bottom and choose where on my stem I feel like it should go. Since I've been having some trouble with glue, I'm just going to use tape. Ooh, Kiku had a good idea to tuck hers into one of the gaps in the wrapping. So, you know, where you were going diagonally, some of you may be able to squeeze it open and sneak something in there. That seems like it might be hard for me, so I'm going to use tape. But that's a really great idea to keep it all together without using glue or tape. If you want, you might want 2 petals or 2 leaves. So you could make a second leaf and have it come out opposite. One thing I think I would change on mine in the future is maybe I would wrap a little bit of green on this part, because to me it doesn't look that natural that there's sort of like that little rectangle here. So if I'm gonna do mine, if I'm gonna spend a little more time, I will make that adjustment. But I feel pretty good. This, took about 20 minutes and we made a flower. That's awesome. You can find a vase to put this in. You could find something special. I have a little purple pot that I'm going to rest it in. All right, good job. All right, that was tricky, and I really like how it came out. I would love to make some in some bright, exciting colors in the future. I could even go back to the one that I did and use markers or paint, and maybe I want to give my calla lily some tiger stripes or some polka dots. So you can keep working on your flower. But before you go today, I wanted to teach you how to make a spider plant. So that's the next thing that we will learn. If you need to get up and get a little bit of water, get a snack, now is probably a good time to do that. I'm going to sip my water. And put on another song. Okay, I think the spider plant is a little bit easier to make than the calla lily, but it's different. So some people might find it a little harder. All right, when you're ready, I want you to take a piece of paper. It can be any color. So you might want to use green, you might want to use white. A lot of times spider plant have, this one does. Let's see if I can show it to you. They might have a white stripe in the middle of a green leaf, or they might have a green stripe in the middle of a white leaf. So if you want to eventually make yours look like that, that's a little inspiration from the spider plant. Why do you think it's called spider plant? All these arms. So we're gonna have fun making those today. So start with your paper. I'm gonna use one green paper and one white paper. And I want you to cut your paper in half. Doesn't have to be perfect, but if you want to fold it first to get that straight line and then cut along that line, that would be a good idea. All right, the next step is we are going to make an accordion fold on this paper. If you've never done that before, eventually we're going to fold it up so that the paper is kind of like a big zigzag, or an accordion, if you know that musical instrument where you... And we're going to do this the long way, similar to how we made the leaf for our calla lily. So for these, we want them to be fairly skinny, maybe about 1 centimeter or half of an inch, because if you look at the spider plant, these are not very wide. And we want our folds to be about as wide as a spider plant is. This is easiest to do on a table. So for your first fold, it will look something like this. And again, this is about 1 centimeter or half an inch. And then for your next fold, you're going to take this part of the paper and pull it backwards and try to line up your next fold with the bottom of your first one. I'm going to do it on my table and then show you. I think it can be really relaxing to do accordion folds, but you do have to focus to get those folds lined up. And again, we don't have to be perfect, but we do want to do our best to line those up. All right, so far I have my first zigzag. This was my first fold. Then I brought my paper backwards and folded it again. So yours should look something like this. And then the next time that I do it, I'm going to fold this part, the long part, down. And I'm going to try to match my next fold with the last one like this. Again, that's easier to do on your table. It can be a little confusing, so if you don't get it right the first time, hopefully you can use another piece of paper and keep practicing. So we're going back and forth doing our accordion folds. At this point, I have what looks like kind of like an M or a W. Then I'm going to fold my long part back up. Match those lines. And down. Mine definitely got a little crooked. That's okay. Because plants are not perfect either in real life. They have all different size leaves. All right. So when you're done, your paper should look something like this. And something that I would do is take this bottom part, like maybe an inch or two, and just fold it. This is our no cut zone. Do not make any cuts on this bottom part. We want this part to be held together. So Joanne asked, how many pieces are we supposed to end up with? I think that's up to you and how abundant you want your spider plant to eventually be. I'm starting with 2. I'm going to see how, like 2 half sheets of paper. So I have this one I folded. This one I'm going to fold next. I'm going to see how that looks, and if I want to add more half sheets later, I can. All right, so everyone should have their accordion folded paper with their no cut zone. But at the top of it, we want to cut a shape that looks a little bit like the real spider plant shape. So I notice that it tapers or gets skinny and pointy at the end. And I want to cut, I'm not cutting down here, but I'm cutting up here to try to make my paper into a point in the middle of the top. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to keep that pointy part at the top. So cutting. Ooh, it can be a little tricky to cut a lot of papers at once. Be careful of your fingers. Go slow. And remember, don't cut in the no cut zone. So stop when you get there. And then you should be able to unfold your paper and see that you have lots of little leaves already. I noticed this one, for some reason, they didn't separate. So I'm gonna go ahead and just trim down the middle of this one to separate those two leaves. If there's any others that are kind of still connected, you can cut along the folded line to give them their own space. It looks kind of like a jester's hat or a crown. So a cool trick, if you do want to add color, and maybe we can do this at the end, but I'll just show you now so that you can have it in your mind and think about it as you keep cutting. One thing that you can do, let me see what I can lean on here. I would put a scrap paper, or like this is a folder that it doesn't matter if I color on it. And you know how we looked at the spider plant and how some of them had like a dark edge on the side or in the middle? You can add color to each of your leaves with a marker and just like draw on the edges like this. And you'll want to do front and back because we'll be able to see both in the final plant. So you can add some color to your leaves, especially at the end. But let's do this one more time. Then we can decorate and put together our two sets of leaves and make any adjustments we want to. So we have one set of leaves and we're going to do the same thing. I'm using another color, but you can use the same color. I have 1/2 sheet of printer paper. This time I'm using green. And again, I'm going to make accordion folds about 1 centimeter thick. Same process as last time to get that kind of zigzag shape. So again, it's like this. I'm folding it back and forth to get that zigzag. When it's like this, I'm folding it backwards, leaning against my table to do this. And when it's behind, I'm folding it back again, trying to match up my folds to each other. All right. So again, I'm going to be extra careful while I cut this, and I'm going to try to cut them as like really long triangles with a pointy tip. I'm going to fold back about 1 inch at the bottom. That's my no cut zone. And then I'm going to cut these longer parts into so they have a point at the end. And I start down low so that I don't have to do that extra work of separating them at the end. This is easier. My scissors are a little small and my paper is a little thick. So it's getting a bit torn, but I kind of like that look. It reminds me of how leaves might look in nature. It's not the sharpest edge. So now I'm making a tip and then I'm trying to go all the way down, being very careful of my fingers, moving along down toward my no cut zone. And then I can unfold and see my many blades. This one got stuck together. I can rip it or I can cut it. I'm going to very carefully rip this time. So now I have this one, and I have my first one. I'm going to take this and I'm going to wrap it around my finger the same way we wrapped our stems up. And then I'm going to take my second one. I'm going to wrap that around my first one. You might find ways to, instead of wrapping my first one around my second one, I could put them together and wrap them as one. And it gets a little busy at the top. All those leaves are all still kind of sticking up straight. So something I could do here is use a little tape at the bottom. I can find my tape. And this might be something you want to put in a small pot or a cup to make it look like it's, a plant in a pot. But I have a little pot. And then once I have it kind of together like this, I'm going to go ahead and do that thing where I wrap the leaves in a curly way so that they'll hold that shape again. Just like we did when we were working on the leaves and petals of our calla lily. We wrap them around something round, whether that's your finger, you can use a pencil and wrap each leaf and then slide your pencil out so that it stays a little curly. If it's too curly, if you say, oh, I want it to be a little straighter than that, you can kind of just give it a little comb with your fingers. Like that. So now we are going to just continue to work on curling the edges of our spider plant down, finding something fun to put it in. You might even find ways to make it look like there's dirt in the pot. Maybe you use beads as the dirt or something else. Like I could even use my scraps and I could crunch them up. I have all these little paper scraps. I could crunch them up and fill the edges so that my spider plant stays snug in its pot and it doesn't wiggle around. So we'll continue that way. I am plugging my computer charger in a little tighter because I'm running out of power. Give me just a moment. Keep curling your leaves, and we'll just do that for a couple more minutes and we'll be wrapping up shortly. All right, so keep working. When you finish, if you want to comment with a photo of your finished beautiful plants, I would love to see how they turn out. I hope this was a relaxing way to spend your evening. I definitely like how this came out. I never made one with two colors before. And I think if I had more time, I would add more color to the white paper like I started to do with the blue. So eventually we want all of the leaves to kind of curl downward a little bit like they do in nature. Some people might want a really curly one. Some people might want theirs to be a bit looser. It's not working to comment a photo. That's okay. Maybe you can post it to your own page and your friends can see it. All right. So we are just about wrapping up. It is 7:30 p.m. Time to eat dinner if you haven't. Maybe time to start getting ready for bed. I'm really happy that I got to spend this time with you, and I hope you had fun making paper plants with me, and that you use these to inspire some future artworks and crafts. Oh no, my lily. Oh, here it is. All right, so we made a calla lily and we made a spider plant. Mine, I think I might trim the stem a little bit, or put it in a deeper pot like my purple one. That's a little better. That looks more natural. There we go. Yay! I'm happy with how these came out. I hope you get creative, use some kooky colors. You can use magazine pages for a really like rainbow effect to make some spider plants or some calla lilies. So keep experimenting and have a lovely evening. Good night, everyone.